Samsung S95C QD-OLED finally beaten? I don't know. Maybe just a little bit roughed up.
I've seen things people wouldn't believe.
Hey, what's up guys? I'm Brian. This is Tech Therapy. Thank you so much for watching. Today's video is a comparison of the Samsung S95C QD-OLED at 77 inches as it goes against the 85-inch Sony Z9K Master Series 8K Mini LED. So why compare these two? Well, why not? The S95C is arguably the best TV in the world right now. It has beaten nearly everything we have thrown at it, including its own sibling QN95C Neo QLED, which is the flagship at over 2,000 nits. Beat it. Never looked dim in that comparison, as well as the 900C. They are now, the QD-OLEDs, larger and brighter. They've wandered into that arena where they can be compared against anything and win. So I had to bring out the Sony Z9K 8K Master Series. For me, simply because the Z9K is a carryover, so it is a current TV. We're not comparing 8K content here. And it is a carryover, it is current. The Z9L is only released, I believe, in Japan, not here in the US. But it has the signature and the philosophy of LEDs from a bygone era. It is nearly 4,000 nits without any dimming to try and hide blooming. It is unleashed. It is an absolute monster. This is where LEDs, at least many of us that love LEDs, thought LEDs were going to go and keep going. The Z9G was also 4,000 nits. We've seen that change, whether it's energy concerns or who knows why, but maybe it's cheaper. LEDs now tend to top out at 2,000, 2,200 nits. Not so much here, meaning in typical comparisons of older OLEDs, they would always look dim in comparison to a brighter LED. Those days are over. OLEDs now look brighter due to the contrast ratio, and it's not even a perceived brightness. They are brighter in many cases as LEDs dim down to hide blooming, or they're close enough, but they do tend to beat them. We'll see how they do in this case. The Z9K is an absolute monster. We are fighting fire with fire. We'll be using the Spears & Munsell calibration disc at 10,000 nits to illustrate the difference in brightness. And while it may clip, the S95C still looks good, as well as the Z9K. We'll also do 4,000 nits as well as some 1,000 nit content as well. It's amazing how the S95C actually hangs in there against the TV, where at the time was twice as expensive, larger, and nearly twice as bright. It shows you how far we've actually come. I think you guys will appreciate the comparison as you watch two absolute monsters go at it. Thank you for watching. All right, guys, let's do it. Z9K on the top, 85 inches against the wall, which is why it looks smaller than the 77-inch S95C. Right off the bat, you can see the brightness different and image quality of the Z9K push past the S95C. Z9K is nearly 4,000 nits. We are in the standard preset, meaning that brightness preferred on the Sony and active tone mapping on the Samsung for this first part. The colors are matched on both. This is a punchy preset you'll see out of the box other than the colors matching. Z9K looks absolutely stunning. Keep in mind it's twice as bright and nearly $10,000 at the time of its release. It is also 8K, but we are here at 1,000 nit content and we are at 4K HDR. Also keep in mind the S95C is a QD-OLED, one of the brightest OLEDs ever made, and look at it hang in there with a mini LED, which is basically one of one in comparison to other mini LEDs other than perhaps the Z9G from a few years prior to the Z9K. Now, for me, I favor the Z9K in a lot of these shots. I do like the brighter blues. I do appreciate the brighter overall image. I will show you later in the video where the S95C absolutely smokes it, and we'll explain that as we go on. But right now, the Z9K looks absolutely stunning. Special shout out to Value Electronics, where this is being filmed. Please consider making your next AV purchase through them. Check the description below for all their information. Let them know that Brian from Brian's Tech Therapy sent you, and and they will take great care of you. Z9K, as I mentioned, is a current model. It is a carryover. Looks phenomenal. But the S95C, I've never seen look dim at all against any other mini LED, namely the Q195C and 8K 900C. It looks dimmer in several shots here, especially even with active tone mapping enabled. They both look unreal. But the fact that the Q195, or I should say the S95C, color-wise looks near to the Z9K is amazing. It doesn't look crazy. Even though live color is enabled in standard, it does still look relatively accurate right there with the Z9K. The Z9K is calibrated, but we are not in that preset. Look at those bright specular highlights on both. Now here, as we get to the end of this demo, you can see the pale look of the Z9K. To me, what that looks like is real heat versus lack of color. You'll see at the very last shot here. It's a paler color, but it does feel like it's real heat. There it is. Now the Q195C, or say the S95C, I'm going to say that many, many times, is the #1 TV in the world right now, edging out the LG G3 by the slimmest of margins. But I think it looks fantastic. The Z9K, as I mentioned, is one of one. Much brighter than the new X95L, except the X95L to me has better processing. The Z9K, especially at 85 inches, is an absolute monster. And the fact that the S95C here looks very close to it in a lot of shots. But even in 1000 nit content, you can see where the Z9K changes and pulls away without losing detail. Now, the only reason why I'm picking on the S95C is simply because it's that good. The processing has come a long way with Samsung. But look how beautiful those two TVs look. Now, I'll tell you, trying to film these at the same size or close together is nearly impossible over 12 feet of TVs. This is the best I could possibly do, so I apologize that they don't look the same as far as size and the 85 inches further back, but I think you get the idea of what I'm trying to show you. The Z9K is phenomenal, but you have to view it as just a mini LED. 8K is not really an issue or something we're worried about. Does the pixel density give it more detail? I really don't notice that, to be honest. I would be buying the Z9K as a 4K TV, if that makes sense. Not because it's 8K. But I think we can also agree the S95C looks absolutely stunning, standing next to a 4000 nit mini LED. But again, we are in the standard preset. This is the out of the box with color matching, meaning whatever processing is enabled for standard for Samsung and for Sony, whether it's reality creation or live color, those are still enabled here. Active tone mapping for the Samsung and brightness preferred for the Sony. We move into the Spears and Munsell new calibration disc. Special shout out to Stacy Spears and Mr. Munsell. We go into, as we move in here, we're going to look right at the filmmaker mode, which I don't love, but I will put it in for you purists out there. Tone mapping will be brought to static. You can see here as I move back into active the differences in brightness. But to the same vein, we are at 10,000 nits. I'll also be moving the Sony to custom, which also isn't calibrated on this particular model, though this TV is calibrated, the Z9K. You'll be able to see 10,000 nits. Now, in 10,000 nits, what you're going to see is the brighter TV is going to clip severely and lose detail. That's not what I want you looking at. What I want you to look at is the brightness difference, not how they look in terms of picture quality. Now, halfway through this Spears and Munsell demo, I will drop it to 2000 nits. You'll be able to see it more clearly. But for the first part with the fences and the horses, you'll see me match them. Reality creation, things like that are disabled for this part of it. As you move into the very first You guys know this disc very well. Stan Munsell and Stacy Spears do tremendous work. Look how much brighter the Z9K is. It gives you that pure white that OLEDs really can't match. The MLA LG G3 can, but you see the differences here in that crispy white. We are here with the horses. Again, the detail is gone. That's not what I'm trying to illustrate for you, but showing you the pure white of the mini LED. Now, the question throughout the video is, which do you prefer? Now, we'll be ending in some of these washed out images. We move back down to 2000 nits. We can agree the blues on the Z9K are more impactful. Though it loses the detail, again, keep in mind we're in 10,000 nits. It's supposed to wash it out. Now, as we get in here, we're going to show you the specular highlights a bit. And after this portion runs out, what I'm going to do is take the camera off the tripod and show you each of these differently. I should say tripod. I said tripod. I'll show you them individually. In larger windows, the Z9K easily has more HDR impact, which makes sense. But that pixel level control of an OLED cannot be stopped. Cannot be matched. And think shadow detail. Though OLEDs are much better at not crushing blacks like they once did, that was always the Achilles heel. In comparison to a bright mini LED, they will still crush shadow detail to some degree, which is only evident when you're comparing them, which is so important with comparisons. Even as we move in here to these shots of black level, you can see slight highlighting around the Z9K, which I'll show you in stills as I go to the side where the blooming will be more evident. Now here there is a richness to the honey and the colors. Both have excellent processing. There is no noise or artifacting. Again, we are in custom and in filmmaker, so that extra contrast enhancer nonsense is disabled. Not nonsense, but you know what I'm saying. The black level on the Z9K is actually excellent in this preset for as bright as it is until you move off angle. Now again, it's washing out on purpose. We're illustrating the brightness. But they both look absolutely amazing. But this is the closest I've seen the the S95C to being beaten, or at least challenged. The G3 was right there with it, but there were times where one looked better than the other. There are a lot of times here where the Z9K does look better to my eye. The question is, how does it look to your eye? Now, I am an LED fan myself, and here we'll go into these different stills. Now, we are going to lower down to, as we go in still, actually this is the part here, we're still at a higher nit. We'll move into this owl where black crush will be evident in the pupils. I will pause it here and you'll be able to see it. When I circle back around, you'll see the eyes is where you'll lose the shadow detail. Now there's more contrast obviously on the S95C, micro contrast in the feathers, in the skin, in the scales of the different animals and reptiles you're seeing in this video. But the Z9K is an absolute powerhouse. Now I believe here we are back down to, I think, 4,000 nits for some of this. More micro contrast and color on the S95C, but which image do you prefer? You're not seeing lifted box from the Z9K. Now in person, the Z9K is much more impactful on a lot of these shots. Now here's we'll break down each scene. Now these videos are rather long, so special shout out to those of you watching in the live premiere. I do keep them long on purpose. You can see the whites here much more evident as we are back at 10,000 nits. Same with this shot. It'll come off the tripod. You can see the pure white on the mini LED versus the bluish. And that's not just the QD-OLED pushing it. It does look like that in comparison to the Z9K. Now here, you'll see the orangey, more rich specular highlights of the S95C versus the more pale, realistic Z9K. In that shot, I do actually like the Z9K a bit better, but they do go back and forth. We move into this next scene here. To me, the sunlight looks real on the Z9K and more painted on the S95C. But still looks stunning, don't get me wrong. But the Z9K, it looks like a real light. And that window, that size on an 85-inch TV might still be 7 inches radius. So it still is a larger specular highlight than the one I'm going to show you next. But what are your thoughts? What do you think of these two? This is where the S95C absolutely destroys the Z9K, and I'll illustrate for you up close. When you get very close here, you'll see where I'm pointing. The lights on the houses are flat. Now this is in daylight. They sparkle on an OLED. It's not close. Think stars, think, here it is. This is daylight scene. And there is no pop at all on the Z9K. It's completely flat. We'll illustrate it again for you here. And then look down here. They're literally glowing. Each individual pixel doing its thing. Nothing other than an OLED can touch that. Maybe micro LED. That is where there is no comparison. It looks completely flat, almost an IPS look on the Z9K in this particular scene. Illustrating again for you here. I mean, it's night and day. Again, that's micro contrast, but also specular highlights that are small. OLEDs will destroy any mini LED. Larger specular highlights, 10% window, will always be more evident on a mini LED that's so bright. Now here you can tell that there is no blooming at all. The image is very solid. Off angle, boom, there it does. Shows itself. It's not terrible, but again, it is an 85-inch, excellent Z9K. Differences in color. Now, you can argue that in some of these shots, there is a pale look to the color of the Z9K due to the contrast ratio and the peak brightness. Scenes like this, where there's much more detail on the scales, due to the micro contrast than there is on the Z9K. But it's all about which image you prefer. Remember, there's no dynamic contrast enabled. All that stuff is disabled here. We are in accurate presets. This is the level of detail that the S95C still brings because of that micro contrast. Now here, this is the classic shot where on mini LEDs, you'll be able to see the eyeball, or whatever the term is, the more detail in the owl's eyes. Where on the OLEDs, since the beginning of time, you will lose that shadow detail. You will see it almost completely black. Can you guys see that there? Even if I raise the exposure, it's not as visible as you see on the mini LED. Get up real close. And now watch the detail in the Z9K. It's more definition. You can see the roundness, the entire eye. Now, though it's a strength for OLEDs now, shadow detail is a priority for them. Not in comparison to a mini LED. You're still losing a good deal of shadow detail. So micro contrast, shadow detail loss versus losing the contrast ratio, having all the shadow detail. Sony's signature, by the way, is to keep creators' intent and flex shadow detail. Now, throwing accuracy out the window, we're going to jump into our vivid and dynamic presets for this part of the demo, and then we're going to finish up back in standard. This is as bright as they go, and you'll be able to see on the Z9K where the brightness, the blues are blue, the whites in the image are white, Right here in this shot, you'll see how much lighter the blue is. There is no 10,000 nit here. We're just in those dynamic contrasts. There's just much more white within the image on the Z9K. Where that will bite it is when this black level, white level crawl happens at the end of this demo, is where you'll see the Z9K absolutely fall apart. So pick your poison. We'll start that right now. You will see that the local dimming can't possibly keep up with the S95C. There it is. You can see the local dimming catching up. You'll see it more evident in that shot and also in this shot here. That's a very hard transition for any TV, but no problem at all for the QD-OLED. Obviously, it is an OLED. But I prefer a lot of what I see from the Z9K as we transition to one of our best LG demos. We are back in standard out of the box, active and brightness preferred were enabled on both of these last two demos. I want to thank you guys so much for watching. Thank you again to Value Electronics. Please consider liking and subscribing. Let me know what you think in the comments. I thank you guys for your friendship. I thank you for watching. They both look absolutely amazing. And probably, in short, the S95C probably still wins for accuracy and contrast. But I watched it get beat up a little bit, which I thought was pretty cool. I hope you enjoyed this comparison. Let me know what you think in the comments. The Z9K is a carryover model. There is a 75 and an 85. What are your thoughts on 8K? But the S95C is really a complete juggernaut, and it's doing amazing even in this comparison where it caught a little bit of a beating. Probably overall, it probably still won, but I figured you guys would enjoy watching it take a couple punches here and there. They're both top of the line. All right, guys, I am Brian. This is Tech Therapy. Thank you again so much. I will see you in the comments. Love you guys. Have a great night. Have a great day. Take care.
There can be only one.